I don't think the game's over.
Not done. We don't want to give up.
I don't think the game's over until...
Not done until the clock says 0. We don't want to give up to the clock says 0.
I don't think the game's over until triple zeros on the clock, triple zeros on the clock, triple zeros on the clock.
Welcome into another episode of Triple Zeros. Got another great episode lined up for you, man. A lot to talk about. I'm going to kick off things immediately and get right into it. Talk about the Thursday night football game between the Los Angeles Rams and the Seattle Seahawks at Century League Field up in Seattle. That was the second week in a row that we've got a really good Thursday night game. Came down to the wire. The final kick missed by Greg Zuerlein, Legatron. Surprising to see him miss one that wasn't really that far out. Seattle ended up winning the game 30-29. As I said, the final field goal attempt missed by Greg Zuerlein of the Los Angeles Rams. It was a battle, man. And the big takeaway, two big takeaways, really, one for each team. Number one, Jared Goff is still heavily reliant on Sean McVay and what he can do for him from the sideline once the defense gets lined up. And number two, Russell Wilson is probably your early MVP leader right now, or at the very least, he's tied with Patrick Mahomes for the number one spot. It's hard to really say. Russ does a lot, and he's so efficient. They don't really call him to throw at the ball a ton, unlike Mahomes up there and out there in Kansas City. But Russ is extremely efficient. When you need him to get it done, he just does everything for that team. They had a good overall performance from the whole team. They got 100 yards from Chris Carson, 118, excuse me. Then he threw the ball to 9 receivers. They had a really, really good game. Russ ended up being 17-23, 73% completion, 268 yards, 4 tutties, though. Like I said, it's going to be a race, and who knows how it's going to go down the stretch. They might go more reliant on the run as the season goes on. We know that that's what they primarily want to do. But right now, it's him and Patrick Mahomes if it's not Russ by himself, to be honest with you. But the rest of the league, though, wasn't just that. Like I said, that's the second week in a row that we've gotten a really good Thursday night game. Last week, we remember we had the Eagles and the Packers, 34-27. That game also came down to the final drive. That was really cool to see. So, like I said, back-to-back weeks. Let's hope we keep it up. This week, we got the Giants and the Patriots. Or next week, excuse me. We have the Giants and the Patriots. It's not necessarily living up to the hype that we've gotten the past couple of weeks. But, you know, Chiefs and Broncos, that's okay. Week 7, Washington. Yeah, okay. So enjoy these 2 weeks basically, because these are probably the best we're going to get for a while. Who knows how things can change in the future? But as we are seeing it, I take that back. You know what? Week 6, it will be good to see the Giants and the Patriots, because maybe Daniel Jones has some of that Eli in him and is the Patriot slayer. We'll have to see how that turns out. But there's some other interesting games on the docket this week that really caught my eye. Number one, the Bucs and the Saints. That's because the Buccaneers have NFL sack leader Shaq Barrett. He has 9 sacks currently, taking on Teddy Bridgewater, filling in for the injured Drew Brees. That has the Saints actually leading the division right now at 3-1, while the Bucs are 2-2. Then you got Jameis Winston going up against the Saints defense that has been porous at times, but we saw last game they actually did well against Dallas. So it'll be interesting to see what gives. Division games are always hard to predict, because the teams know each other so well, but the X factor is Teddy and how much he'll throw the ball, how much they'll do with him. They didn't really change the offense too much, but you can tell there was a difference between Drew Brees. Obviously, that's just what's going to happen when you go from one of the greatest passers of this generation to Teddy Bridgewater, who has talent, but is not on the level of Drew Brees. Let's be completely honest about that. The next game that caught my eye, Cardinals at Bengals. Both teams are winless. The Cardinals, remember, tied with the Detroit Lions, though. The Bengals are just 0-4 and looking terrible right now. If put under the gun and had to pick a winner in this game, it'd probably be the Cardinals. The Bengals just lost another receiver. John Ross got put on IR with a shoulder injury. They still don't have A.J. Green back, so it'll be Tyler Boyd, Auden Tate, and Austin Erickson. So Alex Erickson, excuse me, not the greatest group of weapons. Tyler Eifert is a shell of himself. They still have Joe Mixon, and the Cardinals defense hasn't been great, but I just feel like this is probably the one team that the Cardinals are more talented than at this point in time. The Bengals offensive line, if it's anything, if the game against the Steelers on Monday night was any indication, then they have the worst offensive line. Now, we've heard all about Arizona and the Kyler Murray having to run for his life because of how terrible their offensive line is, but we're going to see. We'll definitely have a definitive loser or definitive worst at everything in the NFL after this game is over. Prediction, though, would be the Cardinals take it. Then you have the Bears taking on the Raiders in London. The big storyline here, aside from this being the game overseas, is that the Bears Pro Bowl All-World pass rusher Khalil Mack will be not returning because it's not in Oakland, but will be facing his old team, the Oakland Raiders, for the first time since the trade went down. And he made no bones about it. This is a game that's big for him. And one of the things that I wrote about in Last Word on Pro Football, the Bears raid London, was the risk of this being a trap game. The bye week is next week, and this is a team that's below par. They're just a subpar team right now. They're not talented enough. This is a game that the Bears should win handily. Something similar to what happened with them against the New York Giants last season, a game that many thought, okay, they had backup Chase Daniel, much like they will tomorrow. Going against a Giants team that was reeling then. They're still reeling, but that's another story altogether. And you have a Raiders team that's similar. They're kind of not backpedaling, but they're kind of working their way through a rebuild right now. And their offensive line isn't great, but they have a good running back. They have Derek Carr, who's still capable. He was an MVP candidate just a few short years ago. And the defense is still not great, but it's, I think, a little bit better against the run, at least, than people were expecting them to be coming into the season. But Mac has made, like I said, Mac made no bones about it. This game means a lot to him. And with that being the case, him being the best player on the field on either team, I feel like the team is going to follow his lead and probably rally around him. At least that's the hope going into it, being a Bears fan. And it's always easier to write victory articles than it is to write the articles after a loss. I think that they go in there and they get a victory over the Raiders in jolly old England, and go into their bye feeling good about themselves and get Mitchell Trubisky back probably after that. But they just need to take care of business. Like I said, this has all the warning signs of a trap game in it, aside from the fact that Khalil Mack has made it known, hey, bro, we got to get this one. So hopefully that makes everybody go, you know what? Yeah, we should probably just go ahead and get this one. I don't want to see any of that fancy stuff that we saw last week and really every game that you get from Matt Nagy. But in particular, when we saw, like I said, going back to that Giants game, that timeout that allowed them to get that extra screen pass to get the field goal before half, got to be smart here. Get in there, get out of there, business as usual, and get back to the club dub so that these guys can enjoy the bye week and they can come out of there, get healthy, hopefully get Akeem Hicks back, who is a game time decision tomorrow. Still no Mitchell Trubisky, like I said. Chase Daniel gets to start. But I know I'm spending a little extra time on this because Bears, man, near and dear to the heart. Next up, Packers at the Cowboys. Both teams are 3-1 and leading their respective divisions. This game has playoff implications beyond just these two teams. The Philadelphia Eagles and Chicago Bears will both be monitoring the outcomes of these games. The Eagles are sitting right now at 2-2, and a victory would get them at least a share of first place. The Packers, a loss here, and a Bears victory could put the Bears in first place. Obviously, if they lose, then it will still be the Packers in the lead because of Green Bay winning the head-to-head matchup in the end. But this game has widespread implications. Now, Green Bay's a little bit banged up. They won't have Devontae Adams, who's out with turf toe. So it'll be Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Geronimo Allison, Jake Kumaro out there catching passes from Aaron Rodgers. But they still have that ground game and that resurgent defense that might give Dak Prescott troubles with Tyron Smith a little banged up. I'm not even sure if he's going to play tomorrow. And then they still don't have all of their weapons, at least not at full strength for the Cowboys. The next game, Cleveland Browns at the San Francisco 49ers. Now, the Browns are 2-2, but they're at the top of their division. San Francisco, coming off their bye week, is 3-0. They are an undefeated team, surprisingly enough, a team that a lot of people were still considering to be finding their way through their rebuild, not necessarily there yet. 3-0, it's still early. Like I said, they had the early bye week, which is always, it's weird because when you're on a roll like them, my guess would be that a lot of players in that team wanted to keep this thing going and not have the bye week yet. But if you're banged up in any way in shape or form, which they kind of are, their backfield has some injuries. They're expecting, I think, to get Tevin Coleman back this week, Kyle Shanahan said. So it's a double-sided, I don't know why I'm messing up with this euphemism here. It's a double-edged sword, right? They can get the guys back healthy, but they're also losing some of that momentum that they had built up going 3-0 to start it off. So it'll really be interesting to see just if the Browns can keep up their rally back from being disappointments early on, which is weird because it was only the first couple of games, but that win against the Ravens kind of made everybody lay off them just slightly because they were, Ravens are a tough team and they went out there and handled business, which also the Ravens, you got to watch out for them. They came out with a bang and have kind of regressed each week since those first couple of games. But the last one on the docket was the AFC South. All four teams are 2-2. Jacksonville takes on Carolina. Atlanta will be at Houston. Buffalo will be at Tennessee. And then the Colts will be taking on the Chiefs. This one's going to be interesting. Like I said, they're all 2-2. If only one of the teams wins, then they get first place. So first place is on the line for all these teams. The ones that I think are going to have the toughest battles will probably be really none of them. If you think, well, no, I take that back. The Colts will, because they have to go against Kansas City. So obviously that's going to be the toughest matchup. But Buffalo might be without Josh Allen, or at the very least, he'll be coming back from a concussion. And against Tennessee, that's actually a pretty even matchup up and down, in my opinion. Atlanta and Houston could have shootout potential. If you got fantasy players, you guys play fantasy football, you might want to fire them up for this one. Although Atlanta's been kind of disappointing this season, being 1-3 and all. Houston at 2-2, like I said, needs a win here to maintain their playoff hopes and kind of shake off a little bit of the negative imagery going on, or negative aura around them right now of how they're struggling. That one could be an interesting game to watch. And then the Jacksonville, Carolina, both of those teams, that could be a low-scoring affair. Both of those teams are great defenses, backup quarterbacks in their manning, undermanned offenses as it is. So, like I said, AFC South, all 2-2. That's something to keep an eye on. The other thing that caught my eye from this week, obviously, I think everybody was talking about it, was Stephon Diggs of the Minnesota Vikings. And excuse my terrible joke, but I had to do it. He missed a meeting. He got fined for it. His coach says he's not sure if he's going to play. Diggs feels like he's going to play. Who knows how this is going to play out? It's almost something similar to what happened with Roquan Smith, except for we kind of know what's going on here. Diggs is frustrated. He had that cryptic tweet or Instagram message talking about basically hinting at he wanted out of there. Kirk Cousins is the offense has morphed around Kirk Cousins to be more run-oriented than it was with him last year, how he was just slinging the ball all over the yard. And accordingly, Diggs and Adam Thielen's numbers have come down from last season, and neither one of them are happy. Thielen went out and laid it out in the media and then went to work on it. Apparently, Diggs was upset and had skipped work, and now things are the way they are. We'll see if he gets on the move. I doubt that they would want to move him for anything, at least easily. He would be demanding of probably a first round and maybe first and some mid-round picks too. They could always go the route of the Jaguars and try to demand 2 first-round picks and ostensibly ensuring that you're not going to be able to get them this season, at least until they have exhausted all other avenues. Which brings us to Jalen Ramsey and the Jaguars, who will be missing that game against Carolina. It'll be his second game. This game is with the back injury. Remember, he missed the previous game for the birth of his child. This is an interesting situation because no matter what the reports have been these past couple of weeks, speculation has still been that Jalen Ramsey is probably going to be on his way out some way or another. Now, the team has said that they are not looking to move him. The asking price for Ramsey is 2 first-round picks, which I just mentioned is a little bit steep, even for a corner as talented as he is. I don't know if anybody was going to be willing to give that up. They could probably, if they could talk them down to a first and a third and a fourth, something like that, where they're just not giving up 2 first rounds. Anything but that, I would imagine, would get the gears moving a lot quicker. Other than that, you got Melvin Gordon's planned return to the Chargers this week against the Broncos. That'll be interesting to see. He hasn't played obviously all year. It's a return from his holdout for his contract. No new deal yet, but he is returning because he was always planning to return around this time. He'll be facing the Broncos. His coach said he's not sure what his workload is going to be. He doesn't want to overwork him, and also he doesn't want to underuse Austin Eckler, who's been filling in great so far this season. That's understandable, but I think sooner rather than later we'll see Melvin reclaim his role upon the top of that backfield. If not, maybe Melvin is the one who gets moved. Who knows? It's really interesting. And the team that he can end up getting moved for is a team with a lot of injuries and who has a young quarterback, but they decided to go back to an old quarterback, and I've been slacking here. We just got done with Melvin Gordon's return. Trent Williams of the Washington Redskins. Now, the Redskins have Dwayne Haskins, but they decided who they ended up playing last week late in that game after Case Keenum bombed. They've said this week, however, Jay Gruden has that Colt McCoy will be the starter. That's an interesting decision. I always feel though as though if you have a young quarterback, you sit them as long as possible just because you want them to learn. Unless you have no one there and you have to throw them out, that's fine. And or if they're the ready-made NFL prospect. But instead of putting Haskins out there to grow with a depleted roster, they decided to go to Colt McCoy. And that brings me to saying the Trent Williams issue. He's reportedly nowhere close to returning to the Redskins. And if that's the case, it almost feels as though maybe the Redskins would be wiser to move him and get something for him as opposed to losing him for nothing or getting a disgruntled employee back in the fold and him souring the locker room with a young quarterback on the roster. Why not get him a weapon like Melvin Gordon, who, though he's had his issues like the backs in the past, he's much younger than Adrian Peterson, much more versatile than Chris Thompson, and he's healthier still than Darius Geis, who's missed most of his first 2 years in the league with injuries. I think that could be the one deal. It's not a secret. A lot of people are talking about discussing it. I think that would be a deal that would be good for both teams. It would make the players, I think, happy. The teams wouldn't have to worry about integrating, like I said, disgruntled employees into positive environments or what they're trying to make into positive environments. And then in Washington, Jay Gruden's likely on his way out anyway, especially if they don't come through with a victory this week. That could be tough to do because this week, Washington takes on New England. So they probably won't be getting their first win this week, right? Probably not. When we come back, we're going to switch gears a little bit, talk about some NBA action and some interesting things that are happening. Got some more Dame and Shaq beef. We got some Bulls news because gotta see red every now and again, and other things to talk about. Stay tuned. Be right back. Wrong one. Don't you hate that? Technical difficulties, boy. Technology never fails. It's always user error. Switching gears, like I said, to the NBA. First things first, I got to get this out there in the open, and I want to make sure everybody understands this. I mean this wholeheartedly. NBA preseason is far and away better than the NFL's preseason. First of all, NFL's preseason, you see no one that you recognize except for maybe a half a drive, and then it's usually just a couple of handoffs, like we saw with the Bears, or some other things that just don't constitute any real action. NBA preseason, you got Steph Curry and Anthony Davis played 18 minutes. Bron played 17. They're not playing heavy minutes, but they're playing minutes. That's something that we didn't see from the NFL side. You had Steph playing 17, D'Angelo Russell playing 18, and as you can clearly tell, the Lakers took on the Golden State Warriors in a game. The Lakers won pretty handily, 123-101. Who cares about the score? Like I said, the major focus here is NBA preseason blows NFL preseason far and away up out of the water. Don't even try to argue with it. Don't add me none of that stuff because you want to see the stars, even if it's an exhibition match, get you fired up for the regular season. Now, it's two different sports, clearly. NFL players sit because of health reasons. NBA players play because they got to get themselves in game shape to be able to run up and down up and down the court consistently. I get that. Doesn't change the fact that makes NBA preseason far and away greater than the NFL preseason. That's why you see the three greater than signs there. Switching gears, but the one I really wanted to talk about with the NBA was some players to watch in 2019. Two sets for similar reasons. The first pair and the second pair. In the first pair, Michael Porter Jr. of the Denver Nuggets and Markelle Fultz of the Orlando Magic. Both of these players have dealt with injuries. Fultz for the last couple of years, first in Philly and now with Orlando. Michael Porter Jr. was in talks about being the number one overall pick last year. Back injury kept him out. Reports a drop foot earlier this year, but he looks healthy so far in the videos that we've seen. Obviously, training videos are just that, training videos. We'll see how his body holds up, but those are two guys that I'm looking to see. And Michael Porter Jr. is one of those guys that you say is an early favorite for Rookie of the Year. You know, the gap year player tends to have that advantage. He'll have some battling to do, though, with a superstar like Zion Williamson down in New Orleans. Everybody's going to want to give it to Zion. Point blank, period. So right now, before a single ball has been dribbled in the regular season in the NBA, Zion Williamson is the favorite for Rookie of the Year. That's just the way it is because of his name recognition, and people are going to want him, everything that he does to be that much greater because of who he is. That's just the way it is. But to be honest, Michael Porter Jr. has a great chance to be the Ben Simmons of this year and be the gap year Rookie of the Year, which, depending on how you feel about that, I was a person who was not a big proponent of it. I really didn't like, you had the advantage of sitting around and working with NBA staff for an entire season prior to playing. That's an advantage over the true rookie, but whatever, that's neither here nor there. That is what it is. The other pair that I'm interested to check out is Ben Simmons and Giannis, because these are two players that I think are the future of the NBA, and they need to complete their games to become all that they can be. Neither one of them has a consistent outside shot. Giannis has had more of one over his career so far, but it's not consistent. Ben has been 3-point averse so far in his career, but we've seen him taking some more. Obviously, again, we're in these workout videos, and training camp and all that kind of stuff. So who knows how many of these he's actually going to shoot in a game? But he has gone on record and said that if it's open, he's going to take it. If Ben Simmons starts hitting and making 3-point shots with any type of consistency, the Philadelphia 76ers are probably your favorites for maybe. Let me backtrack. I got a little caught up in my own hype right there. They might not be the favorites for the title, but they are clear favorites, in my opinion, to get to the East. Now, I already have them coming out the East, but I feel like if Ben's hitting threes, I don't know how you're picking anybody over them, except for maybe the Bucks because of where they were, because of them being there last year. But they lost Brogdon. That's no small blow. Wes Matthews steps in there. He can't really fill the entire role that Brogdon did defensively, guarding 3 positions, but he can still shoot the ball. He can do what he does. That's the only team that I think is going to really be vying for the final contention with the Sixers. I think everybody else is a step below. Watch out for Indiana, though. That is my dark horse. Brooklyn is a year away. They'll be tough, but they'll be a year away. Boston, I think, regresses harder than people want to admit. Toronto as well. Orlando, I think, struggles to make it again this year because I think you see the Miami Heat and the Chicago Bulls challenge for playoff spots. Detroit might have a difficult time. So really right now, the top 2 spots are, in my opinion, Philadelphia and Milwaukee. And then right there, I think, is Indiana if they're all healthy. That backcourt and that roster construction is really intriguing to me with those big guys, Sabonis and Miles Turner. And then you got Brogdon and Oladipo in the backcourt. And then you got TJ Warren on the wing. That's a pretty solid lineup if they can stay healthy. Obviously, a big caveat for any contender, any team. But that team, they're strong. They can defend. So it'll be interesting to see where they can go over the long haul. Moving up to a broader examination here. NBA teams to watch this year. And we got 4 again. 2 in the West, 2 in the East. The first team, Sacramento Kings. That team, I liken them to what the Brooklyn Nets were doing. If you followed on jukesandjumpers.wordpress.com, before the season ended last year, I said that the Bulls should follow the example of the Brooklyn Nets, and in there I mentioned that the Kings are also a team who, though they were mocking the Bulls should be taking notes from how they did it, where they kind of just not tore it down, but they tore it down. They moved out the best player, brought some young things back, and slowly but surely rebuilt it to a promising young group that has a bright future and maybe just a superstar away, or maybe they even have the superstar there between De'Aaron Fox, Marvin Bagley, and Harry Giles, who had number 1 overall potential before all the injuries to his knees. We'll see what they end up being, but that's a team that was close to a playoff spot last season, could take a step forward this year with some maturity and some growth and some more veterans. They got Ariza, Rashawn Holmes coming off the bench. You still got Harrison Barnes there. They got Bogdan Bojanovic. They got Boban Bojanovic. I always get those 2 mixed up. So I'm curious to see what they end up doing if another year gets them closer. They got Luke Walton this year after firing their coach last year. So that's the number one, the first team that I'm interested to see. And then the next one, the obvious one is the New Orleans Pelicans with that Lakers core and how they progressed this year without the pressure of being in LA. they've made no bones that it's different playing for LA than it is down in New Orleans. So I'm interested to see if these guys are able to play a little bit freer, be themselves. Brandon Ingram in particular. Lonzo Ball seems like his game could just go anywhere because he's really a guy who just makes everything else work. Josh Hart is a guy who I'm interested to see because he's done a lot of chirping about how unhappy he was in that situation with the Lakers. So let's see if he has a better one here. The Pelicans have a nice young team with some pieces now. They got Zion, like I said. You got Okafor down there. You still got Jackson Hayes. They got Derek Favors. You got JJ Redick, Drew Holiday. They have pieces. So they're going to be young. I think they're going to be really good defensively with Holiday, Ball, Ingram. Zion can defend someone. Then you still got Hayes down low, like I said, and Favors down low. That team might not be playoff ready because they're so very young, but they're going to give a lot of teams fits, and they're going to take a lot of pride in beating some of those top-tier teams and proving that their talent was what everybody thought it was prior to LeBron's arrival and the turmoil that they faced last year and ultimately ended up getting traded for Anthony Davis. The next team, moving over to the Eastern Conference, is the Atlanta Hawks. Trae Young, Kevin Huerter, Cam Reddish, who I thought the Bulls should have taken prior to them getting Kobe White, which I was actually happy with. It's one of those things where I wanted Reddish, but I was not upset with White, but we'll get to that in a second. DeAndre Hunter, you got John Collins, and then you kind of have a hole in the pivot. This team is going to be fun to watch if they can come together and you got these guys can find their identity. They're going to need some help defensively. Hunter alone isn't going to be enough. Reddish, I think, is a wild card depending on how much of his projection is he close to the guy before Duke, or is he the guy that people's opinion became of him during his time at Duke when he was a third wheel. I am of the volition that he is of the first ilk, where he's really a superstar who was bogged down being the third wheel and having to defer to other more recognizable players, but we'll see how that ends up playing out. That's a team that's going to be fun to watch. They might not win a lot of games like New Orleans. They might not win a lot of games, but they're going to be in a lot of games, and they're going to give a lot of teams fits, and those teams that are sleeping on them are going to get caught off guard and taken down because they are sleeping on them. Then, finally, the Chicago Bulls, my beloved Chicago Bulls. See Red Nation, stand up. I think this team has a chance to surprise a lot of people this year. I already mentioned I think that they can challenge for a playoff spot. I think they get that playoff spot. You could be like, well, I probably are wondering how. They only won 22 games last year. They dealt with an inordinate amount of injuries, and I think health alone is going to get them to the 40-win mark, closer to the 40-win mark than it does the 20-win mark. We could see a team in the East with a losing record make the playoffs. That's highly possible, but I don't think it will be. I just think it's possible. And I think the Bulls will be one of those teams, like I said, 7th seed, 8th seed. If they're extremely fortunate, they can get up to a 6, but I definitely can see them in the 7th and 8th mix. And you got Levine, a full season with Otto Porter, hopefully better health for Markkanen and Wendell Carter, who's already been banged up a little bit, but whatever. We'll hope that when the regular season rolls around, he'll be better. They've got improved depth with Thaddeus Young, Tomas Satoransky, who might end up starting, who knows. Kobe White, the number 1 draft pick, like I said, who fits well either coming off the bench or as a starter in that with Levine and Markkanen, who will both probably be handling the ball the most. I don't think it'll be Chris Dunn starting again, but he is still around and seems like they've reversed course somewhat. I wrote for Pippen Ain't Easy that they talked about his defensive prowess, and he echoed those sentiments. So it seems like they have a plan on working together. Who knows if they plan on doing that for the long run, but at least they have figured out that there is value to be had with him being there, and both sides have agreed that there is something to be said for his presence on that roster. That's good that they don't overlook it and they don't let it just blow past because they're trying to force a deal and they sell him for pennies on the dollar. He's a valuable player, and I think that somebody will up for him, and if not, then he can fit in that rotation where you have Kobe, Tomas, and Dunn rotating at the point, and Tomas and Kobe can rotate in with Zach too to give Zach some breathers. So there's some minutes there. It'll be interesting to see how it all works out. It depends on who starts to begin the year. Don't expect it to be Kobe. I think it'll be Tomas Satoransky so you can get some length out there, but it might be better to have Dunn give it one more college try to start the year. I'm not sure. I don't know. I'd have to see how they're playing camp, but speaking of the Bulls, though, that wasn't the only reason why the Bulls were in the news today. The Bulls announced that they would be dropping a little bit of a throwback, something that we're all highly familiar with. Well, I'm highly familiar with, and this is just a moment where I'm going to take myself out and let you see what happens when the Bulls brain trust does something wonderful and brilliant.
Back in the days when it was a team. Back in the days when it was a team.
Play to Pippen. Crashing the board.
That's right, man. The Bulls announced that their statement edition jerseys for the 2019-2020 season will be throwback pinstripe black jerseys from the 72-win 95-96 Michael Jordan era Bulls, Robin Harper. You know the deal, Scott. Boy, what? Them bad boys sick. Now, I already made a special request out. Birthday's coming up. Made a special request to get the City Blues from last year. Might have to switch that up to get the pinstripes. I love those jerseys. Those were the first jerseys I remember looking at and just being in complete awe of, like, oh, that's slick. Like, you know, they used to look cool. Jerseys were always cool watching them as a kid, but that one to me was one of the first basketball jerseys I looked at and was like, that's nasty. You know what I mean? Like, just, oh my. I don't know if you've ever had that moment, but that's one that did it for me. Excited about that, and it's a good nod for a good time in Bulls. Hopefully they can recapture some of that glory very, very soon. We're going to wrap it up with this. Last episode, I talked to you about the Dame Dash, Shaquille O'Neal beef. Dame Dollars, Damian Lillard, Shaquille O'Neal beef, where they were going back and forth with the rap bars. Dame, I felt, won the opening bout with Shaquille. I played both songs for you, snippets of both songs for you. Shaq showed a picture of him and his producers talking about they were going to go back into the studio. Dame said, forget a picture about going back into the studio, and went out and dropped another track. Go ahead and take a little quick listen to what Dame had to say this time, going back to back Drake style on Shaq.
You's a clout chaser, even after all the success. Fake love on the camera, he capping all at the desk. Ghost riders on deck, checker bars, no chest. Hailing from the land of the muscle cars. No flex, you not a rapper. You comedy, commentary, and actor. Feed them with a slingshot, you better call the pastor. David and Goliath, your stature's a non-factor. Friends really love you, they scatter and contact you like Shaq, just let it be, cause no weapon's gonna ever prosper. Remember, you're a cop with endorsements and you're a doctor.
Man, look, Dame gets very personal in this one. He talks about him and Shaq and Shawnee's troubled relationship, telling him how he's fronting, basically telling him how he caps on the stage, fake love, and then tries to do all of this, and how he's playing around as a rapper, and how, you know, Dame's made no qualms about how he takes this seriously. He doesn't consider himself to be an athlete who raps. He considers himself to be a legitimate rap artist. Shaq, I usually don't say things like this, but Shaq kind of got to respond, right? You would think I would say Shaq should probably let this go, because that picture clearly set something off in Dame that Shaq wasn't anticipating, or that Shaq didn't need in his life at this point in time, but he did it. And at this now, Shaq, you have to come back, because Dame, as he named the track, Rest My Case, Dame made a good case for resting the case and closing the door on this beef, and declaring himself the winner, which he already has prior to releasing this song. So this was just, again, double tap, which I thought was only for zombies. Apparently not, though. We'll see how Shaq returns. Good week of football games coming up, man. Excited to see what happens. Hope to catch you next time. Thanks for watching the episode. If you enjoyed it, let me know. Like, subscribe, share, please. 000. Until next time, man, I am your host, Josh. Follow me on Twitter, Josh G. Buck. 000 on YouTube, Facebook page, Juice and Jumpers, the website, juiceandjumpers.wordpress.com. Until next time, my friends, deuces.